David Gossett. I'm 82 years old. I was born in July 1940. Clovis, New Mexico. Well, I have one brother, Leroy, who's 3 years older than me. Both of my parents have passed away. My father was Furman Alton Gossett. He died in 1996. And my mother died in 2000. And her maiden name was Foreman. She was originally from Searcy, Arkansas. My dad was born in Haskell, Texas. But he and his family moved to New Mexico when he was a teenager, and they spent the rest of his life there in Clovis and around Clovis. He was in the cattle business. First of all, the first early years during the war years of World War II, he worked for and then owned the school buses. In New Mexico, the independent school districts didn't own the buses, they contracted. And then when the war was over, he sold the buses because he figured that he was going to lose a bunch of his routes, but anyway, he had a chance to sell, so he sold out. And then he got into the cattle business, just buying and selling cattle and horses. And well, that was my life from the time I was 6 years old or so, which is when he sold the buses. I was 6. I made every step I could with him when I wasn't in school and all. And then I knew how to take care of his cattle. When he was gone, my mother would have to take me to the feed yards, and I'd feed the cattle and take care of them. It was just a love that I had. And then he helped me when the summer would come, we'd get out of school. Well, he'd always buy me a couple of young horses, and I'd start breaking horses and selling them. Back then, you could buy yearling plus colts for about $12.15 to $17.50, and I'd ride them for about 2 weeks, take them back through the horse sale, and they'd bring me $35, $40. So I'd made my school money that way, and I did that up into high school actually, and then when I got out of high school, I realized that that wasn't the route that I could take, because it just, I had ambitions of making lots of money back then, so it's kind of got fooled. But anyway, my senior year, I worked in a meat market in afternoons and on weekends, and my dad had started a little small meat packing plant, so that's where my connection with the meat market was. And anyway, when I got out of high school, then I went to work at a Ford dealership in the parts room. Worked there till I went into the Army, and when I got out of the Army, I went back to the Ford dealership and got hired as a salesman and started selling. And I made that my profession till 1998. We actually sold our dealership, which we had started. We bought the Mazda franchise in 1976 and ran it for 22 years and sold it in 1998. It was just one of those things you learn that you learn what from the automobile business, what cars would sell and what wouldn't. And our biggest business, because we were a small franchise, we were a Mazda dealership, and it was a small franchise. Our main revenue was from the used car side, and we just had to learn what used cars would sell, and then we bought a lot of used cars to stock our inventories, and it was quite an experience. You know, sometimes you'd go one that you didn't win with, you know, but we raised our children through that dealership, and we're very blessed that we had a daughter and a son that were both interested in what we were doing, and they helped us along with doing the commercials, and they became famous in the the San Angelo market because everybody would see them in the malls or somewhere. Well, you're Amy Good Mileage or you're Blake the tire kicker. And it was kind of funny because, you know, actually we kind of swelled with pride because we were very happy that people were seeing our commercials and recognizing our children. And then we were very blessed that our children, they raised themselves, I guess, but they grew up not in trouble and none of that. They actually were perfect children. And in the course of all that, we made a living and we're blessed to have the opportunity to spend time because our children were both active in high school and we, owning the business, we could be available when they were doing activities. Amy was cheerleading, we could go to her ball games, and then Blake was playing baseball and so we could go to his games. So it was very, very nice that we could actually participate in their lives, and it was also nice that they shared their lives with us. Life is always going to offer you some bitter pills. Back in 1973 or 4, somewhere along in there, we had a big hailstorm hit San Angelo, and it tore up all but 2 cars that we had. We had 2 cars at home and a garage at the house, and it tore up everything else, and we had to work to get rid of all those vehicles. And eventually we went with no specific revenue for quite some time, but we were blessed that we managed to take the 2 cars that weren't damaged and use them to sell some and buy lesser vehicles, and that bailed us out of that. But that was a pretty big challenge for us. And then after we got out of the car business, we got into the aviation business. Well, that was a lesson to be learned also because we started Skyline Aviation for our son Blake, and then a year later he took a job flying in Midland, and Melody and I were blessed with a business that we really didn't know anything about, but we were also blessed that we had good people around us and good people working with us that helped us bring it into survival. And it was very, very, very lucrative. But then the city got on us and decided they were going to close our doors. So we had another big, strong struggle and fight. But we also overcame it because God blessed us. That's a hard one. I really don't know. At that time, I thought I knew all there was to know about the world. But I learned that there's opportunities. And one of the big things that I've learned over the years is if you want to make money, and money seems to be the core that you're working for in so many cases, find a need and fill it. I just hope that nobody could come back and say, well, you know, he was a crook. I want to think that my reputation carried me through, and I feel like we've been very blessed with the opportunities that have been presented to us to show our true feelings. And I think the one thing that if I would tell my grandchildren is work is not going to kill you. As a matter of fact, if you're going to get anything, you're going to mature into anything worthwhile, get a good work ethic.